your opening statement, you said that the Coast Guard provides Department of Defense services. You mentioned 20 cutters, you mentioned aircraft. What is the total cost of the services that you are currently providing for national defense purposes, worldwide?
Yeah, Congressman, I'll break that out and provide you what that breaks out to. And that includes salaries, maintenance. It's a pretty significant number when you add it all up. It's not just the cost of burning fuel doing a mission.
Yeah, I would appreciate that information. When we took this issue up on the floor with an amendment that I proposed last week, the chairman, I think it was the chairman of the Appropriation Committee, spoke on the floor and said that the Coast Guard does not provide any national defense services. In answer to the question that the chairman just posed to you, the problem is ignorance amongst us. And so we have to deal with that. And if you can provide us with the information about the actual cost of the services and all of the equipment, airplanes, cutters, et cetera, it would be helpful in providing a little level of knowledge to key people here within this department. Also, we might send that information to the Office of Management and Budget, where I think I heard you say, no, you didn't accuse them of the problem, but you did say you were given instructions. And so this sheet of information that you gave us is really a result of the Office of Management and Budget telling you what you must tell us. Don't respond. I don't want you to get in trouble. However, I do note that the Office of Management and Budget is willing to spend $1.6 billion on a 40 to 70 mile extension of existing walls or repair of existing walls on the Mexican border. What could you do with $1.6 billion to really protect the United States from immigrants, drug smugglers, and the like on the southern border?
If you allow me firsthand, where I've been in the last month, meeting with presidents in Colombia and the Vice President of Ecuador, the President of Panama, and heads of state in Mexico City. When I was in Ecuador, they had violent crime and they had drug usage because of the rampant growth of cocaine coming out of the country of Colombia. Colombia is besieged with the amount of coca under development. Mexico is seeing at their front at the far end of this, but everyone is saying we need more United States Coast Guard off our coast. And as successful as we are, it really comes down to sheer numbers. We don't have enough planes in the air to include unmanned aerial systems, enough ships on the ocean to leverage all of the information. We have an awareness of over 80% of the drug flow that's ultimately destined for our nation. It doesn't land, you know, it lands 1,500 miles south of the border. It lands in bulk in 80-pound bales of cocaine. And when it lands, law enforcement will turn their head the other way because if they don't, they'll be killed. Rule of law goes out the window. That's why we're seeing violent crime. With that violent crime, which is why you're seeing families putting their children in the hands of human smugglers to get them to the United States. The irony is the United States demand is driving this train. And yet they want to get their children here in the United States. But to stop this where this threat is most vulnerable is actually at sea, where this law enforcement agency will not turn its back. We will seize you, and we will prosecute you. That, to me, is a key instrument of regional stability right here in our backyard where we see some of the worst violent crime in the world is right here just to the south and well south of our border with our trade partner, Mexico.
You gave a very good description of what you're doing. What could you do with $1.6 billion? These are our choices. We, the representatives of the American people, are making a choice to spend $1.6 billion on a wall, or on some 40, maybe 70 miles of wall, instead of spending that money on the U.S. Coast Guard or on any other thing. And my question is, if you had $1.6 billion, it's going to be spent the next year. It's going to be spent in 2018, budget year, $1.6 billion. Now, we could make the choice to give $1.6 billion of additional money to the Coast Guard. You could build 3 icebreakers over the next 3 years, 4 years, with $1.6 billion. Is that correct? About
Once
700
we-
now, 2.5.
Yeah, but once we award a contract, do a block buy, and then it's a delivery schedule. We build out not 4, but 6 fast response cutters each year. We accelerate the build-out of the offshore patrol cutter, because these are the assets, especially our fast response cutters, offshore patrol cutters, that we can bring and swing into this part of the world.
And for icebreakers, if you had a block buy, there's 700 to 800 billion, a million apiece, 700 to 800 million apiece. I think that's the current estimate.
That's a ballpark figure.
So 2.5, not 3. These are choices. These are choices that we're making. I listened last night to the, sitting there listening for hours to the Rules Committee debating what to do with this 1.6 billion for a wall. I just bring this to the attention of all of us here. Currently, the plan is 3 heavies and 3 lights to deal with the issues, icebreakers, going forward. They're not in your budget. They're not in your 5-year capital investment, acquisition, construction, improvement budget, nor are any of the onshore facilities that are in the document that you gave us of unfunded priorities. Incidentally, I don't see in this document either the 2 additional heavies or the 2 or the 3 lights. Is that an unfunded priority that's not listed here?
What you're seeing is just our near-term unfunded priority list.
Okay.
That doesn't take us out into a 20-year SIP.
I noticed that your your total budget is somewhere around $10 billion a year, maybe 11 if we add in
10.7,
the
salaries, retirement, that's everything.
I'm going to just speak to the chairman here for a moment. There are 2 of us on this committee that are also on the Armed Services Committee. And over the last week, I know you and I have been trying to leverage into the Department of Defense's $700 billion budget, another billion or so for the Coast Guard, particularly for the icebreakers. We've been unsuccessful in doing that. And I think we ought to continue to try to do that. I do not have an explanation for the question you raised, Mr. Chairman, about why the U.S. Navy wants to build 350 or have 355 ships and not be able to use any of those ships except for submarines in the Arctic Ocean. It makes no sense to me at all. They want to build more LCSs, which are, by their own estimate, useless in a conflicted environment, but yet they want 3 more of those, which those 3 could fund 2 of the icebreakers. I don't understand. I don't understand what the U.S. Navy is thinking here, nor do I understand what my colleagues on the House Armed Services Committee are thinking about continuing to build ships that are useless in the Arctic, and we know the Arctic is a contested environment today and will be more so in the future. So I guess I'm just speaking, I don't know, maybe to myself here, but I want the public to know that there's a serious error being made by the House Armed Services Committee and specifically by the subcommittee dealing with sea power, in that they are building ships that are not capable in a contested environment, LCSs, that do not perform even the services in an uncontested environment for which they were designed. At the same time, unwilling to provide the U.S. Coast Guard, which is a defense organization, as well as a civilian organization, with the money it needs not only for icebreakers, but to provide the men, equipment necessary for the existing Department of Defense services that they're doing. So maybe I'm preaching to the choir here, but I want it on the record that we are making some serious errors, and we've got to correct these errors. With that, I yield back.
Thank the ranking member. I think the Coast Guard